7 kids, 1 marriage, and 1 estate agency with 300 properties under management. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
Good to be here.
Lovely. Right, okay. So, when did you guys meet up then?
The first time, back in '99 at a Valentine's party in Huddersfield, of all places.
How old were you then?
20? No, we were 21.
21.
Yeah, 21.
Okay.
Still.
So, why are you both in Huddersfield? Because from your accents, you're certainly not from Huddersfield.
Julie had a house in Huddersfield that she was looking to sell, so living in Nottingham at the time, but moving back to Huddersfield to sort affairs out. And I was going down to a party with a friend who was a mutual friend of Julie's from London, and kind of just...
You met the first time and fell in love?
No, to be honest, I only took his number because he lived in Sunderland, and my dad's originally from Sunderland, so I've got a lot of family there, and I just thought, oh, it'd be great to hook up if I was ever up in
You got
Sunderland.
bored?
Yeah, if I was up there and needed somebody to hang out with, so I took his number, and it was my housemate who just pestered me to ring him, which I did, and then about 4.5 hours later, phone call ended, and I was just kind of like, oh, that's weird. Because it just felt so natural.
Back in the day when you had phone calls, attached to the end of a big long cable and a phone sitting on the floor in your mum's house.
So at the time, you were at McDonald's, weren't you?
No, Julie was at
You were at
McDonald's.
So I was, so I'd been working at McDonald's. I transferred back to Nottingham when I moved back.
So you were at uni in Huddersfield, were you then?
Yeah, so I was at university in Huddersfield.
What were you reading there then?
I was doing textile design.
Okay.
So completely nothing to do with whatever I've done.
Didn't you
really.
fancy a little bit of the old...
No, well, I'd done textile design. I'd taken a year out, I travelled a bit, and I was working at McDonald's. I bought a house because I fell out with our landlord. So I went, right, I'm buying my own, as you do at 19 years old.
And you could do it then, couldn't you?
Well, you could. I still look back and I'm like, flip.
I wish we'd held on to that thing.
I know. I bought my first house.
£18,000. 18 grand.
But yeah, no, so I did that. Yeah, but 7% mortgage rates back in the day. So no, I'd moved back to London, moved back to Nottingham, and I'd just gone back up to Huddersfield to sort out getting the house sold and things, and just putting things in place really. And just coincided that it was at the party, and that's where we met. Yeah. And the rest is history.
Got married quite quickly, didn't you?
Just a bit.
Fairly quickly.
From that first phone call to actually getting married.
So the first meet was 12th of
12th of Feb.
And wedding was on the 22nd of May.
The same year. So, and we didn't see each other for 4 weeks after that first meeting. So...
Wasn't a shotgun wedding, was it, or anything like that?
No,
not at all. Although a lot of people did say, like, who's she getting married to, because they weren't quite sure. They hadn't really met you.
Why did you make the decision to get married so quickly?
We've always, well, as it turns out, we've always, I wouldn't say we've been impulsive, because we're not, but once we've got an idea, we run with it, we don't mess around, we just get on with it. And the thought of, because I wasn't driving at the time, so the thought of getting on buses and trains to Nottingham every weekend was just like, oh, this is ridiculous. And actually, I'd gone down, I was speaking to Julie's dad, who was thinking of starting an art gallery. So I'd gone down to see Julie's dad. He quite liked the idea of me running the art gallery, and he was going to have an apartment above it. So I'd gone down to tell Julie, here's the good news, I'm moving down to Nottingham. I told her what I thought was amazing news. She's just like, is that all? That's not commitment. So,
to be fair, he had told me that things were in. I think we both knew that we were going to get married, and I was expecting
within a couple of months, within weeks.
We did, yeah. We just knew. I mean,
they reckon that within 7 weeks is too quick and 7 years is too long. You obviously were going for the 7 weeks, right? You were right at the limit, weren't you?
Yeah, we 10, so we're at the sweet spot, I guess.
No, so I knew I was expecting a proposal, and what I got was, I'll move down and see what happens. And I was like, nah.
I still think that's a pretty big commitment.
Where does that drive or feistiness come from, Julie?
Where does it come from? I don't know.
Her dad.
Probably my dad.
100% from my dad.
But I was just a place in my life where I wasn't prepared to just hang on. I'd
Hold on
been,
a second, you were in your early 20s.
yeah, but
Yeah. Welcome to my world, Chris.
Did you have a
I'd done brilliant
did you have a
first.
6-year-old's head on a 22-year-old
But
child?
look, probably, you know, I had my own house, I'd travelled, I'd been working full time. So, yeah, I was young, but I had done quite a bit and I had plans. I was looking to do some voluntary work overseas and I didn't want to hang around. I didn't want to put that on hold for a maybe. And I was expecting a proposal and move down and see what happens. I was just like, no, we already know that we're going to get married. We either do this or we don't. And we were initially going to get married in the August, and then just the way that things happened, I was like, no, that seems too long away. And the next date available was May, and that's how it all worked out.
How did your parents feel that it was all a bit quick? I'm not saying that in a bad way, by the way.
Well, they were fine.
They were fine, except when we moved it from August to May,
The panic.
I was in Sunderland at the time and phoned them and said, oh, we're going to move the wedding forward. And my parents just kind of went,
We'll be there.
don't do anything, don't do anything, we're on our way. And they drove up.
I forgot.
And then the next day I went and bought my wedding dress. So, and everything was pretty much organised and sorted.
And that's a pretty good summary of the last 20.
What, you make a decision, you go for it?
Yeah. I think we're quite impatient.
If there isn't a decision to be made, then I am quite. I don't necessarily make it, but once it's there and once it's right, bang, gone, done.
Do you lack patience, either of you?
Yes.
She does.
I guess I do. I think that's why I've got 7 kids, though. They're trying to teach me patience. With nudity. I'm
She
more
lacks
patient than what
patience, and I go with the flow, I think.
So you're the grey rock in the stream and let it go over.
Until something needs to be done, when action needs to be taking place, that's when I kind of really come into my own.
Who's the perfectionist between the two of you?
I used to think that I was. No, I'm not. I'm too busy.
I'm not a perfectionist. Well, I seek perfection, but I know that I can't achieve it at the same time. So
How did you square that one? Because it's quite a mature mindset to go for, you know, excellence as opposed to perfection, because perfection is almost like a mental illness. You'll never get
perfection.
beat yourself up.
I have tortured myself for the last 25 years chasing perfection. But
When did the penny drop?
I think when you got really ill, wasn't it?
I think the penny dropped about 2 or 3 years ago.
Which was 1920,
What's that?
2019, 20.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when it dropped, I realised I'd always known it. So I'm driven by improvement. I'm driven by knowing that there's always something that can be done better. A lot of the work that I did pre-estate agency was performance.
Yeah, you worked for Barclays, didn't you? Was that up north or in Nottingham then?
No, so there was a call centre up in Sunderland, huge call centre in Sunderland, and I'd started there as a team leader in the outbound department. Had quite a lot of experience in kind of outbound calling and stuff like that. And then
Because you went through the ranks of
I did.
team leader, all the business analyst, commercial manager, national performance manager.
Senior national performance
Oh,
manager
there
in
you
the
go.
end.
Let's not forget the senior. There you
Don't
go.
get me started with Barclays and job titles.
Extra £3,000 a year. So so literally within 10 years,
Yeah.
you went from running a group of telephonists
Yeah.
all the way through to being head honcho of outbound calling.
Well, no, that wasn't in outbound. So by the end, my responsibility was the national performance of the wealth management and Premier Banking. So, you know,
Okay, right. So that was you. This is all up north.
all up north.
Yeah, all in
well,
Sunderland.
based out of Sunderland, but obviously a lot of travelling, which was one of the reasons that I ended up leaving, or wanting to leave anyway.
So you moved house in 2000, and very quickly, babies started coming.
Yeah.
2002.
No, Emily was born 2001. Then, I had 3 under 3. I had 3 under 3, so I was busy. But I was still working at the time, and it
You
wasn't
worked for
until
McDonald's.
yeah. So when I moved up to Sunderland, obviously I didn't have a job. Went into the McDonald's that was there, and they were looking for admin. I had no interest in being floor manager and anymore.
No.
I was quite happy to do the admin side of things.
And there's a lot of admin at McDonald's.
There can be, yeah.
Big staff turnover, big
So
staff recruitment.
I'd gone into the actual individual restaurant and I was doing admin in the restaurant. I knew the franchisee owner from when I was down in Huddersfield, because he was the regional person there at the time. And they were in the process of getting another restaurant. And they had a position where they wanted a group admin, and I was the natural thing for that. So that, yeah, I was working with Jasper and Jackie in their office with them. So having a married couple franchise dynamic, it's what my working career really, it's been around and what I'm used to. And seeing them were great mentors, actually.
Although, does that make me the Jasper to your Jackie then? Because that's quite
No.
a scary thought.
Not quite. But
How are you balancing that with 3 children? And we haven't got to 7 yet.
We just did. We've got a
So
good
I
support
was-
network, and we had nursery.
So when I was
had
in the outbound
maternity.
department, a lot obviously when you do an outbound course, it's generally later on in the evening. So when I was managing that department, it was generally either 11/7 or 1 till 9. So it meant that I could kind of get kids to school in the morning. Julie would.
Well, they were all still
So
really babies.
it kind of like it just balanced, and I think that's the flexibility that we've always had. It's never been a specific, apart from the time when we consciously said, you know, we were in a fortunate position that Julie didn't need to work. Other than that, it's always been a case of, look, there will be times when you need to do this bit and I need to do that bit. And,
Yeah.
you know, it was never, you have this role, you have that role, you have this role, you have that role.
Why didn't you need to work?
Just family income. We didn't need to.
You had a good job.
I had a good job.
Yeah.
We don't get me wrong, Julie could have gotten an excellent job and we could have had even more.
You'd just spent it there, wouldn't you? Have you noticed how...
I think there's more. It's not just about
It's
the
never
income.
been our
It's
key
about
driver.
yeah. Yes, we want to be comfortable, but our children and our family and their needs come first. And obviously, their needs are physical needs and being provided with them, but mentally and physically being there and present in their life. And so I think Danny was our 3rd child. He was quite young. I'd left. We just decided that I'd leave. I was doing, through the Princess Trust, I set up Paper Threads, which was using my textile. So I was doing I was like a textile artist and doing wedding stationery and stuff, which suited. I could work around the kids. I could work around home. Did that for a couple of years until I had Annabelle. And then I never went back. I think at the time I was thinking, oh, shall I start doing it again? I got very heavily involved in the school and then went to
PTA.
uni. Yeah, I was
That sort of
really
stuff, I think.
involved, yeah. Well, we moved a mile and a half so we could be closer to the school.
And
So
my
I
work.
could walk to school and Chris could walk to work. So we did that whole move just to make our life a little bit easier in the morning.
Well, we sat there and it's like, we're going to need a second car.
Yeah.
And why a second car for doing a mile a day? It's like ridiculous. So let's just move house.
Yeah, so we did, and then a few years later, when our circumstances changed again, and the kids changed schools, we moved back to the house that we were originally at, because we never sold it, we just rented it out whilst we bought the other one. So we moved back, and that was the wholesome of our lettings experience when we opened Martin & Co.
Managing our property.
Managing our own
And I
property.
think you went to university to do a bit of ceramics and glass.
Yeah, so I'd gone, but it was like, do I do accounts? Do I do like the AAT qualification, or do I go to uni? And I went to visit a friend who was doing glass and ceramics in the studio there, and just the creative energy and buzz.
Decision was made, wasn't it?
Yeah. To be fair, Chris had gone down to London. This is another example of us making quick decisions. Chris was working in London. I'd seen that it was clearing. I phoned up to say, don't suppose you've got any spaces on the glass and ceramics. And by the end of the day, I'd been offered a place. And by the time Chris came home, I was like, oh yeah, I'll start uni next week. He's like, what? So that worked really well. I absolutely loved that time. And doing that, got to learn how to blow glass and dealing with hot glass, and I loved it.
So why aren't you running Barclays, and why aren't you doing your ceramics and glass? Because this is the point where you decided, hey, let's go and open a letting agency.
So you've got to remember the year. So we'd just come out of financial crisis. So 2009 was the year that we moved house, and we were there 2-3 years. We were doing the house up, and then we'd made the decision to move back. Within Barclays, there'd been a lot of restructuring. So it was constant because of the financial crisis. Every 7 to 8 months, it was restructure.
It was well known that you would go through a restructure every 18 months, and generally your middle management would be absolutely massacred.
Had you got through one of them?
Got through 2 of them.
Yeah.
And did you think almost second, my luck's going to be running out soon?
No, you know what it is? We went through one after I'd been there about 10 years, and I'd looked at the package, and I just looked at it and was like, I'm better off staying. And then I'd had another promotion, and I'd been in about 12 and a half, 13 years, and I looked at the package and I just thought, you know what? I'm not fussed either way. If I go, I go. If I stay, I stay. Anyway, came through, it was a very different company by that point. It was very kind of competitive and very kind of aggressive in the market, and it just didn't feel right. So redundancy came up, took it. And
so you basically took a nice package, which gave you a bit of a parachute.
Took a nice package. I looked at that and I thought, right, I've got no idea what I'm going to do. I hate job interview, despise with an absolute passion job interviews. I almost threw away the easiest job interview you could ever have for a job that I'd been doing for a year in secondment. And I almost blew that because I love talking, but I hate bigging myself up. So I just thought, right, we'll take some time, 3 months garden, 6 months gardening leave, one of the two, so a really good package anyway. And then I got a phone call about a month later from one of the people at Barclays saying, your boss has gone on mat leave, we could really do with your expertise on some of the projects you were on. So I thought, yeah, whatever, we'll do it. And I went back and it was hands down the worst thing I've ever done. Literally every hour felt like a day, every day felt like a week, every week felt like a month. It was just, with me, I've got to be emotionally invested. If I'm not emotionally invested, you just don't get even 50%.
Well, I think you've got a few pressures on you as well, because we'd moved back, we'd done the extension. Elijah was due.
Sixth baby.
So baby 6 was due in
different
November.
having 6 or 7 versus 2 or 3. I know you.
The more you have, the easier it gets until they hit teenage.
The second one was probably the hardest.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you're the second.
And I continued.
They always say the second offices are offices.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because you're that used to, but it's the same principle. You're that used to committing everything you've got to this one thing, person, business, kid, or whatever. And then all of a sudden, especially when they're close in age, you're sitting there going, that one needs the nappy changing, but this one's about to take the first step. It's like, what do I do? It's like, well, they poo themselves every day, but they never take the first step every day. So so that's where second child syndrome and all of that comes from. So, it is difficult because all of a sudden, instead of giving everything to this one child, you've got to try and share it across the two. And
then does the third get easier and the fourth, and then
It does, because they then start bringing each other up and helping
Yeah.
each other. And you've got children, unless you're having triplets or whatever, they're at different ages.
By the way, if our second child, Amy's listening to this, she'll be sitting there claiming justification for her
everything.
poor upbringing the entire time.
But no, you going from 1 to 2 is a big transition. 2 to 3, not as much, but then they outnumber you. And it's like, okay, if you're not...
They hold kangaroo courts against the decisions that you've made and try and overrule you by a jury of their peers.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's not something I've thought about actually, but it's kind of like staff as well though. When you're by yourself and it's your business, you're in control of absolutely everything, then you bring a member of staff in and you're giving up a little bit of that, but it's great because you can hand some things over and see somebody grow and develop. Then you get to 2 and 3 and 4.
and then you have the interaction between them two, and then all.
Yeah.
Managing, I don't think it's a coincidence that people refer to staff as family sometimes, because it is a similar dynamic a lot of the time, managing all those.
Depend on the kind of business and the dynamic that you're trying to achieve anyway, it does. So.
Okay, so actually, probably going back to Barclays was a good thing, because then you might have looked over your shoulder, not sure, but you actually confirmed it wasn't for you.
Yeah, 100%. I'd emotionally gone. I'd realised that, don't get me wrong, I loved the job that I was doing. It was great, but I'd said goodbye to the people. You know, I'd already done my goodbyes. There was a few that had gone on and stuff like that. And it was just like, I don't know, it just wasn't there anymore. That spark that drove me on, that search for perfection, knowing that I was managing a project that actually I probably would never see the end of anyway.
Yeah.
So,
What do? Just go to the franchise show and see what was...
so
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't go to a show.
Could have had a McDonald's one.
Well, the thing was, funny enough, though, that did play in our minds, because we were used. I had experience of a franchise model, so I knew what that involved and entailed.
our whole reason for going franchise is, obviously Julie wasn't working at the time, so she was studying. So this needed to be a proper business, not like, and don't get me wrong, I've got no problem with hobby businesses, but we couldn't have a hobby business. It needed to be an income generational business. Probably not the right decision in retrospect, but so we needed something that was scalable, something that could move up. And also, you know, I had some illness while I was at Barclays. I'd got post-viral fatigue syndrome and completely wiped me out for a significant period of time. So I was conscious that, you know, if something happened with me, Julie needed to be in a position that she could pick up the slack.
I mean, we said at the start, you're now up to 300 under management, a decent estate agency, but although it's more lettings, and we'll come on to that journey. Do you think you would be where you are today if you weren't a franchise?
No. So a lot of people ask me this: why don't you go by yourself? I think a relationship with a franchisee, franchisor, is always ups and downs. We'd had friends who'd been with a franchise before, a major international franchise, and they were very hands-on management. We were quite clear that we didn't want to be with somebody who was looking over your shoulder, telling you what hours to open, what charges to price, you know, when you needed to do this, how many stock you needed to order, and all of this stuff. We didn't want that, but we wanted something that had our back. So
What does
I mean,
Martin?
let's be
What does?
honest,
Sorry.
We loved property, me in particular.
you loved it, bro.
I probably spent more time on Rightmove pre-Martin
Okay.
than I did
Okay.
than I have since.
Okay. But I love eating, but it doesn't make me a good restaurateur.
Well, we decided it was something that we wanted to do together. It needed to be a decent business, and we obviously had to have an interest in it. It needed to be.
So if we go back to our thought process, apart from the fact that I didn't want to do a job interview ever again, you know, we looked at a number of different things. We looked at educational stuff, we looked at sports stuff, we looked at sports in education. We actually looked at things like Lego parties for like teaching kids how to do maths in school and stuff like that, using Lego and Duplo. So we'd never gone in with a specific, we want to be estate agents, and we'd registered for a couple of franchise emails and stuff like that, and we got one from the property franchise group, but it was Martin Co PLC at the time, and we thought, yeah, worst case scenario, we go down to Bournemouth and we have a nice weekend in
But we
Bournemouth.
didn't know it was in Bournemouth then.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
that point, we
So-
just said, oh yeah, it's probably worth looking at, and that's what we did.
Yeah.
And we made
So you're going to see Penny?
Yes, we
headed
did
down
go
to see
see
Penny. I think it was the day after
Start.
So I'd had Elijah 19th of November.
This was
This
February.
was in January, so Elijah was only 3 months old, and I'd obviously been out of the working mode for quite some years. So the thought of going down to
Yeah.
Bournemouth for an interview.
Julie was really intimidated, thinking I'm the weak link in this, and she's kind of saying, look, we're going to have to rely on your CV, your management experience, and all of these kind of things. So I'm sitting there going, okay.
But Penny's lovely. She's not. She's.
Well,
So
That's
Penny,
a bit-
Penny started. She started talking. So Chris, I can see your experience. Blah blah blah. And 7 kids.
I know.
And then,
Six.
6. Sorry.
Say-
and then literally, I think I could have just walked out and made myself a drink, and Julie and Penny could have had a chat, and it was like everything that I'd done was irrelevant. It was just like, how do you manage all of that, you know, and how do you manage that household, and university and stuff like that. And I think that was clearly the clincher. So
But she was like, oh, and you've got face-to-face experience with your paper threads, and you've got this experience doing this, and Chris just
I'm
sat
kind of
there.
going, hi, I'm here as well.
I think an awful lot of people give themselves reasons why they shouldn't do it.
Yes. And I think that's one of the good things about us is we're almost naively dipping our toes in stuff all of the time. So I think we seem to, and I don't know whether it's intentional or not, put ourselves into situations where those kind of things can happen. And therefore, the more likely to happen, the more times you dip your toes in. This is an example, you know what I mean? We could have just stayed in sunny Sunderland and enjoyed all of that lovely weather that we have up on the northeast coast. But, you know, we like to open ourselves up to different experiences, not with any intention, not with any, oh, I wonder what we could get off the back of this, but just opening ourselves up to opportunities.
Do you think you could have either of you done it if you were on your own?
No.
Without the other one, not a chance.
We
Well,
always stop. So we've had experience.
Julie cut off.
of it. No, because when I did, I didn't. There wasn't that balance. We both bring things to the business. We both bring something different to the business, which balances it. And although I think what you said is, if it was just you, it would fail, and it probably would because you don't do the background.
If it was just me, it would have failed within weeks. It would have failed. I'd have had.
Are you a big picture person and that's strange because big picture, but normally and doesn't like the micro small picture. But then you said you're a perfectionist.
So
have you got are you bipolar or something?
Well, it's been said. It's been said a million times.
But
Or
yeah,
a little bit of ADHD.
more than a little bit.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I've had quite a few people on that sofa. Exceptional estate agents. You need the people skills, but normally people with people skills are not very good at detail.
Yeah.
But if you've got the people skills and have some kind of on the slight scale of ADHD, it is actually almost a super weapon. I mean, I'm not.
No, 100%. So my view. Let me take a couple of seconds on this. So, I didn't even know that ADHD was a thing, other than for naughty kids. First of all, I've had no diagnosis whatsoever or anything like that. I had an experience a year ago. I've terrible understanding of time, but I'd had an experience within the last 12, 18 months, and I'd secured, I can't even remember which deal it was, I'd secured a huge deal, like the biggest deal we'd ever done. And I was absolutely buzzing. I came into the office, told Julie, it's absolutely bouncing off the walls. Couldn't believe how excited it was going to be for our business and stuff like that. And by the time Julie had come home and all of that adrenaline had drained out my body, I was asleep and I just wanted to be asleep. I just did not want to be awake. I'd completely crashed. Not in a bad way, not in a dangerous way. I just literally I didn't want to be awake anymore. So I'd gone to sleep about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, something like that. Woke up the next day. I was supposed to be at a networking event the next morning, ironically about mental health. And it was on at 10 o'clock. And it was like 9:30. I was just like, I'm not going. And then for some reason, I just went, I need to go. So I'd gone, pair of tracksuit bottoms, scruffy t-shirt, scruffy trainers and stuff like that. And they were talking about ADHD. And this woman was on stage talking about it. And I was just like, oh my goodness, has she been like following me my entire life? And it was just like that. I can still remember every single detail of that day, what people were wearing. It was just like a light bulb just went on in my head. And then I think that awareness has, I went through the normal, no, that's not really me. I need to know everything about it. Now I don't want to know anything about it. And the whole range of things that you go through.
That whole process was
just... Hyper focus, no focus whatsoever. Hyper focus, no focus whatsoever. But it's given me a bit of an awareness, the kind of condition it is, it still affects you, but kind of, I guess I'm able to sometimes jump out of my head and
have a helicopter view.
Yeah, sit down watching me and kind of saying, yes, I know I'm going through this. And you can't stop yourself going through those emotions, but at the same time, I'm sitting out there going, it's not real and it's not going to last.
But it's self-awareness is such a superpower.
It is, and I've really struggled for self-awareness for so long, and I've been really harsh on myself. But in this last 12, 18 months, once I accepted it, it is a superpower. And for me, for me, the biggest stigma in mental health is the mental bit. You know, it's not mental health, it's just health. You know, it's a real frustration of me. If I'd been in a car accident and I'd hit my head and there was, you know, brain damage and I couldn't concentrate and I couldn't focus because of a car accident, everybody would bend over backwards to help you and stuff because it's something tangible, it's something you can see, something you can understand. When it's just, well, that's the way that my brain works, that's the way that the synapses connect together, people are just like, well, I don't understand that, so it can't be the same. You know, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. It's not physical health and mental health, it's just health.
I think when you have that self-awareness, you can manage yourself and your life and different things. So there's a lot of things that we've put in place at work, just from a working point of view, and say, okay, well, this is how I work, so I have to block my diary. Don't be putting viewings or like little itty bitty meetings because I'll get nothing done then. I either do appraisals in the morning or an afternoon, and just understanding ADHD and how it affects you and how you has helped us a lot within the business.
I think once you understand it, it's no different than it's not a weakness. In some things it's a strength, and in other things it's a weakness. If Julie wasn't there, it would be a massive weakness because all of those details things and paying people and stuff like that, kind of important things wouldn't happen. But I think once you were aware of it, it's just like any shortfall. Some people are good at speaking to people, others aren't. And you build your team and you build your business around that. So if your detail and your follow-up and stuff like that, my follow-up is terrible. The amount of business that I've probably lost by winning the instruction in the actual instruction and then not following it up. You know, I could have probably retired 2 years ago, but then you build a team around that and say, well, if that's not my strength, let's build a team that builds on that.
Do the team recognise these strengths?
Yes, the team know. The team know, and they know how Chris works and they know how I work. And I think sometimes, you can spend too much time trying to make people's weaknesses better, or say, trying to create sort of a level playing field where really we've kind of changed our perspective and say, right, this is something that you're really good at. Let's push that. We'll get somebody else to deal with the weaknesses that will be somebody else's strengths. So we've got a member of staff who's very, very good at the follow-up. So when Chris does an appraisal, she does all the follow-up now.
So literally, if I do the appraisal, I'll go back, I'll write up the appraisal, I'll either send it on to her so that she can forward on and introduce herself, or I will send it on to the client and say, here's the appraisal. I've copied in Sarah, so she can follow up and answer any questions so it's kind of closing off those gaps. I think it's important to do that, but at the same time I think it's important not to draw too much attention to it and make it this big thing, because then it maintains that stigma. It's just, this is my way of working, this is my strength and this is my weakness. It doesn't really matter what causes that strength and weakness. But when I was at Barclays, we instituted a program which was based on people's strengths. It was a program called Strength Finder, and it's absolutely brilliant. And it talks about strengths not necessarily being the things that you're good at, but the things that motivate you and excite you. So when I did that, it was like reading a story of my own life, creativity, futuristic ideation, all of these big, looking for patterns and correlations in things. So you talk about detail and big picture. I love my stats, I love my detail, but I don't love them for the sake of loving them. I love them for the story that it helps me to tell.
And you think that this awareness has made you a better person?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I'll stand in front of a bunch of investors and I'll say, did you know that you could buy a house in Sunderland for the same price in 2008, any time until 2021? And straight away, you know that you've got them because they've probably never heard that again. If I say that as of last month, the average house price in Sunderland was £128,743, they know that I'm not filling them with rubbish because I would have rounded it up.
And it's done well for you, but also good for your business as well.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I think self-awareness, understanding yourself and building on your strengths. Don't beat yourself up for your weaknesses, because your weakness is somebody else's strength. So build your team around that, and don't beat yourself. You used to beat yourself up a lot.
Oh, every time I lost an instruction, if I lost the instruction because of me, I wouldn't be bothered if I lost it because I lost it for whatever reason. But if I had it in my hand and I lost it because I didn't send them the contract or something, I would absolutely beat myself up. I'd be like, there's another couple of grand gone straight out the door.
Thank you for your insight.
But I don't do it anymore.
So now we're in 2023.
Yeah.
You've had some acquisitions.
Yeah.
You're doing really well. Like we said at the start, 7 kids, 1 marriage, 300 properties, and a letting agency. What you're in your 40s, early 40s, obviously.
Yes. Mid.
Closer to
She's slightly midder than me, but
Okay. Then.
slightly.
What does the future hold for Chris and Julie?
Grandkids.
I know.
You've got married, and one's married.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our eldest is married.
Oh, we're not putting any pressure on her.
No.
No.
You've got darling about here.
No. So for what's the future? I don't. This is maybe where Julie and I differ. Julie has always got to have a plan. Always got to have a plan. Always got to have the next thing. Always got to know what's coming next. Always got to be working towards something. Whereas I'm much more, I wouldn't say opportunistic, but I'm trying to think of the word.
See what comes at you and deal with it when it gets here. And
Yeah, but that almost sounds quite passive, if you know what I mean. But
Can't
it's,
make plans.
No, I
And
can't.
This is about understanding ADHD. It used to frustrate the hell out of me, because I'd say, right, are we going to go on holiday this year, or what are we going to do about this? Because I now understand that, I now have to give him 2 choices and say which one. Because if I say, where do you want to go for holiday? You just start thinking, the world's a big place, there's so many things.
I start analysing the entire holiday market in the world. That's
then
where my mind
just
goes.
have a choice. You're absolutely right.
And it just blows me out.
So having that self-awareness with Chris has actually helped our relationship, because I now know, right, I need to give you 2 options. So I'm the one.
I feel myself being managed every day.
But it's rightly so. I'm the same.
Yeah.
Let's go on holiday. I don't know. Right, well, we can go to that hotel or that hotel.
Yeah. So now actually, I don't even say that. I'll say, I'm doing this. Do you want to come or not? Or I've got this, or I'm going to take the kids this place. Do you want to come with us? Yeah. Okay,
But I think
then I'll organise.
so.
it so
So
it happens.
Julie always has to have a plan. I'm kind of less planned, and I see what's coming up, but make those opportunities. So for me, you know, I think you've always got to be ready. We've always said this. You've always got to be ready to sell your business or expand your business, so that if and when an opportunity comes along, you take it. Now, that's not to say we're looking to sell our business. That's not to say we're looking to do a new acquisition. But that's kind of that openness and readiness just means that you're there to jump on any opportunities as they come. We've never really planned to do acquisitions as such, but because we've had that open mindset, kind of when an opportunity come along, and almost exclusively every one of those has approached us because of the relationship that we built with us.
And we're going to talk about that.
Yeah,
Do you think you've got a good deal as well because you had that relationship?
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
We'll come on to that in a separate video, boys and girls.
So because we've been able to act quickly, we're open to things, and just like when we decided to get married, once we've made the decision, it happens.
Yeah, I mean, say somebody comes along today and just says, here's £1 million for your business. If you're not in a position, if you don't have your books and everything all, you know, you miss the chance of a lifetime. Or if somebody says, I'm about to shut my business, you can have it for £5, and you don't know, you don't have your process in place, you know, then again, you're stuffed. So you've got to put yourself in a position where at least it's your choice. And we've turned away opportunities because either it wasn't right at the time or just it wasn't the right opportunity. But at least you're sitting there going, that was our choice, as opposed to it's being imposed on you.
Than be acted on. And I think in business, what we've learned is you never actually stand still. If you look at any business, regardless of the industry, it's either moving forward or it's moving backwards. There's always movement there. You never just stand still. And if you as a business owner stand still, you're going back. You've got to always be looking
And this
changing
yeah.
and adapting. And more so, I think that's come in focus more, particularly with COVID, how quickly you need to be able to change. Now, a lot of businesses really, within the estate agency, really struggled with that. Those that were forward thinking and that were already even simple things like having cloud-based internet phone systems, people who were paperless, people who were doing 360 photography, or their own photography. When COVID came, those businesses were able to pivot much more quicker and easier than a lot of other businesses. A lot of other businesses really struggled that weren't forward thinking. Or now, I'm not saying, nobody knew that COVID was going to happen in the way that it did, and the implications and how that would impact on us. But just looking and having that resilience built in for whatever, putting processes in and just asking the questions, right? Well, if we lost power to our business,
What would happen if?
What would happen? What would happen if the internet went down? How would we access?
But it's deeper
what
than
would
that.
happen if
It's
stuff-
deeper than that as well, though. It's like one of the things that drives me in that continuous improvement is, what's a state agency going to look like in 5 years' time? What's it going to look like in 2 years' time? What's the next thing? We might not buy it, but what's the next thing that might change things? We were the first agent in Sunderland to use a Matterport scan. And then when everybody started doing them on sales, we were doing them on international city centre lets in Sunderland, because you get to use them every single year. And your students who were phoning up going, can you do a video too? It's just like, here you go, here's a Matterport link. And it was brilliant for us. That was way before, well before COVID, before anybody was using them. So I think it's that ability to look forward and kind of predict and look what could be the game changer.
Well, let's get you back in 5 years' time and see where we are. Thank you for your time today.
No problem.
No problem.